Okay, welcome, Michael. How are you?
I'm doing good. How are you today, Misha?
I am good. I'm here with Michael Hamlin. We're going to be discussing really for mid-market and small business, the evaluation of customer experience platforms, call center, contact center. And Michael, do you want to maybe give a quick just summary of what you do at AppDirect and who you are?
Yeah, sure. So thanks for the time here, Misha. Yeah, Michael Hamlin. I am the CX specialist, and for those of you who don't know, CX stands for customer experience specialist here with AppDirect, and we take a vendor agnostic approach to better improve your ability to stay in touch with meet your customers in the way that they want to be met.
And really you're working with folks like across the board, small business, medium-sized business, and enterprise as well, right?
Yes, I all the time on my Slack internally from other employees, I get the question from anywhere from 1 seat to multi thousands of seats. So yes, all across the board, across different verticals. So pretty much if it's out there, if there is a business, we work with it.
Okay, and that's really why I wanted to talk to you today, because we'll go a little bit into the Gartner Magic Quadrant and talk about what may or may not be relevant for businesses that aren't enterprise. But maybe we can just start off by defining what for years we've heard call center, for years we've heard contact center. And
Mhm.
now we seem to be hearing CX all the time and customer experience. I'd be if you wouldn't mind just giving us a definition of what really is the difference, and perhaps how it continues to evolve.
You're right, Misha. So for years, unified communications and what we thought of as contact center were kind of siloed. So you had various products doing unified communications, which is more like me and you are coworkers, Misha, and we want to interact internally. And that's one thing, right? And we're all familiar with Microsoft Teams or Zoom or
Yep.
whatever it is, chatting back and forth, Slack. But then you turn your focus to, okay, we're a business. So what does every business have in common? Customers, hopefully, if you're going to be in business for very long. So you have customers. So that was more contact center focus. You might could use a UCAS or unified communications platform to communicate with your customers. Like I can pick up the phone and answer my customer. But really, to get that full experience, to have, maybe I want to be able to instant message with my customer from the website, or maybe I want to be able to track that through our CRM systems. All of those things required contact center. What's happened in recent years, what's been great, fantastic for the market, is those things have started to come together. So now a lot of your unified communications, traditional unified communications companies have started building on these contact centers or acquiring them. And so it's all now about the customer experience. They're trying to break down the silos because, Misha, if I'm sitting in let's say a call center, okay,
Mhm.
maybe just 5 employees where,
Yeah.
hey, this is the way we communicate externally with our customers, and they call
Yep.
in and you're the product expert on the back end, I may need to get that call over to you, or I may need to IM you in the background and get some information for that customer. So even though you're not customer facing, it all goes into a better customer experience. And that's why CX or customer experience is kind of now an all encompassing term.
Okay. And for those folks that are in these different industries that use that really have different customer experience or experiences that they're offering to their customers, if we take a look at the Gartner Magic Quadrant and say, okay,
Mhm.
let's just take a look at this overview that is put out for the entire industry. How relevant is it for, say, a bank or a credit union or a car dealership, a medium-sized organization? It Since it's put out for enterprise, many times it's focused on the global market. Many times the criteria actually tends to be perhaps categories that mid-market or small business don't really relate to. How relevant is it when we look at the players in there? How relevant is it as we look at the criteria to even evaluate and choose a contact center or a call center?
Yeah, and you bring up a good point. The Gartner Magic Quadrant, and so by the way, if I'm a business of 10 people and I go out and I do a search, probably what's going to pop up is those Gartner Magic Quadrant leaders, right? And they overall do a fantastic job, and that's why they're part of the Gartner Magic Quadrant. But very much to your point, Gartner weighs some of those things as, okay, who has a big international presence, so that's a big part of the weight score. Well, that doesn't apply to me. I'm a 10 person, small office that only operates in this regional, south central part of the Americas. So that doesn't really apply to me. So, what can I do? Where can I look? I'm looking at things that get weighted on, maybe things that are outside of what I need as a business. And the other thing you brought up, like a bank, well, Gartner has to weigh things across all these verticals, right? So it's not specific to that particular vertical. So that's the reason why there are people like you and me that work with these platforms every day, work with these companies every day. So rather than going out there and doing an internet search on your own, and then you've got to weed through 5 or 10 different players, you can come to somebody like Misha or myself, and we can say, you know what, yes, those 5 players are really great, but we know that 3 of them maybe aren't as well suited to the banking industry as these other 2 over here. And by the way, there's somebody that's not listed on this Gartner quadrant that really excels in banking. They don't excel in other things, but they excel in banking, which is the reason why they are not in the Gartner quadrant. And we should add those in there too. And then we can, help you weed those out so you're not wasting time interviewing, demoing with those 5 that don't match. We give you the 3 that really are going to match, and you demo with those and you pick one of those.
And I think we should point out as well that I feel like, yes, these Magic Quadrant leaders who end up, working with the largest organizations in the world, also many times are really good fits for the mid-market and even small business. And I feel like over the last few years, they've had a lot of focus on that. There's been a lot of concentration on, let's go ahead and not miss this market as well. But I'm curious as far as a starting place, because if you're looking at the evaluation process for an enterprise, and a lot of times you're going to be, working with the big 5 consulting companies that come in, they help you evaluate, they help you deal with workflow, what workflow is working, what needs to change, how data migration is going to flow, all of that. So when you're working generally, because you see so many different folks, Michael, when you're working with, let's just start with very small business and 10 agents, 5 agents, something like that. What's your starting point in a discussion with those folks as far as, okay, we're going to go from here to there. This is how you're working today. These are the things you're integrating in. What's the general process for you? What questions are you asking them?
So what you said is very close to what I would start off doing, which is great with the smaller business, because generally the person I'm talking to has those answers, right? With the enterprise, it's very siloed. No, we do this very specific function. And so if we step out of, if we need to look at it at a little higher level, okay, we're going to have another meeting and bring bring the owner, of that organization in to understand how this in fits in the workflow of what we need. So exactly what you said. What I like about working with small medium business is generally the person we're talking to can answer those questions. So I really start from the outside in. Okay, who's contacting you? What are they contacting you for? And how does that normally go? So I like to get a baseline of how their workflow happens today. And then, with based on the experience that we have working with, everybody from enterprise to small, medium business, kind of break down each segment of that workflow, and think of things that we've seen in the past, have been able to maybe completely change that workflow in a good way, right? Not in a bad way. We're not there to, tear up what they're doing. Um, but maybe change that workflow for the better, or just improve, make it more efficient, certain segments of that for those employees.
Yeah, so and that is interesting with the workflow, because it feels to me, and we can talk about it in a few minutes, but it feels to me, particularly with the adoption of so many different technologies and communications because of AI at the moment, that we really have to think through those workflows and really, I think it's sometimes easy to forget that what we're trying to do is accommodate better customer experience, and for our agents to work better, to also to give better customer service. So I'd like to come back and talk about workflow in a minute. But as far as the mid-market folks that are just a little bit higher up, you're dealing with, say, maybe 100 agents, or 50 to 150 or something like that. It seems like in the past, the departments that we were dealing with was not usually IT, but many times it is now. Many times it
Mm.
seems like the CIO is very much involved. And over the last couple of years, at least, I felt a shift. And I think there's all sorts of compliance and security reasons, and making sure that integration's flowing properly. But how do you address those? How do you address those different stakeholders and kind of bring them together in this process? What are the different folks who you need to have at the table?
Yeah, and I think, asking those questions up front, right off of the first meeting, a lot of times the person that you're talking to, whoever that contact is, let's just say if it is the IT person, um, they may not completely wrap their heads around everybody that you're gonna need to speak to, right? So it's not like they're showing up thinking they can run the whole thing. They just don't have the experience in understanding. When you start asking these questions, they start realizing, you know what, we need the stakeholder of the, maybe the contact center supervisor or the VP of customer experience or somebody to join this conversation. And then it can go even further when you start asking, well, do your customers come in on the website, and do they chat from the website, or do they SMS? Would they like to SMS you? And the IT person's thinking, well, yeah, but our marketing person owns that. So maybe they need to be in on this conversation. So for the mediums, so that medium-sized business, yeah, it starts to pretty quickly, it starts to click that we need to have various other owners of those segments join us for this conversation. And I think they can see value in the way we're looking at it holistically. And maybe they don't start off on, you know going all in on SMS, going all in on chat from the website. And you brought up AI, Misha. So maybe they don't initially think, what about AI for right now, but they need to start with the end in mind, right? Because if they're eventually going to that, right, or they're going to be, their competitors certainly are. So if they need to start thinking that way, so really, even though we might not be implementing that day one, we need to implement a solution that they can grow into, and with the end in mind, along those lines. So
And in that vein, it does feel like the major focus this last year in contact center platforms across the board have been adding AI
mhm.
in one way or another. Is that fair to say?
Yes, and not even just, and we kind of defined at the beginning contact center and unified communications, or UC, across the board, right? Because every employee, you know, just I think we both have seen how AI has enhanced our workflow. Mine certainly has. You said how, what's that conversation I usually have with a customer to start to uncover what they need.
Mm-hmm.
So I used to talk to customers, and I do the best I can, but I'm furiously taking notes, right? And sometimes I'm so focused on getting what they previously said, they're already they're 2 or 3 sentences down the line, and I miss some things. And so one of the things like AI, for instance, our AI note takers and making the summary, a lot of times, because I still do take notes, right? Because maybe I pick up something that the AIs aren't perfect. Maybe I pick out something that I think is really important. But I'll go back and I'll look at that AI transcription, and it picked out things that I missed. So it's almost like having, two people taking notes, and from two different angles, understanding what the customer's saying that you're talking to. And so I found it to be fantastic. So I go and I merge those notes together. And that's just one example, right?
Yeah,
You
and I
turn
think it's a
that.
good example because I think I'm curious so the note taking, I'm curious to discuss a little bit of what the low hanging fruit is in AI, because I think that,
Mhm.
once we say AI, we're all thinking, or a lot of us are thinking conversational AI, and offloading from the agent. You're calling in and you're talking to an AI instead of talking to an agent. But in practicality, without kind of going to the bleeding edge, right? And getting to the at the end of the day, we want customers to be happy, right? I mean, I can
Right.
tell you this whole thing that we've had for, decades of calling into phone trees to auto attendants and dial one for this and two for this. And it's so frustrating because you're probably going to end up at a place where you've been on the phone 20 minutes punching these numbers, and it's going to call up, and you're going to call in again, you're going to reach somebody, and they're going to have no idea who you are, any of that, right? So that's just frustrating. So if I'm calling in and talking to an AI that's really as smart as some of the chat bots, I'm not going to be very happy with that experience. But what you just said, the note taking, I mean, a year ago, the note taking, even where we are in Zoom, it really wasn't very good. And it's really quite good. It summarizes well. And you can, and I know that in the industry of contact center now, that it is saving time for sure at the end of calls, where people used to have to, the agents would have to summarize everything, and that's
Mhm.
able to be done, as part of the platform now. I'm curious, some other communications that are being used where, end customers are happy with the experience, but it's also good for the company. Can you think of some examples there?
Yeah, I sure can. And a lot of times when we think of AI, and I'm kind of pausing here because I can feel like people watching the video thinking AI, and eyes are rolling or whatever.
Yeah,
But
yeah, yeah, yeah. That definitely
but
has been the case. We're all pretty much sick of the discussion and theory.
yeah. And honestly, what I love about CX or UCAS or whatever you want to, whatever you want to call it, everything that kind of encompasses that customer experience is we've actually been doing this for several years, right? Before it was, Chat GTP, GPT, before it was, generative AI, we've actually been doing this for a while. We weren't calling it AI, maybe machine learning or something like that. We've been doing it for a while. So where it first started is the ability, I remember, 5, 6 years ago, the ability to have those calls or interactions recorded and then have AI go through and score those, and scoring's great, right? Because you get a view of maybe how certain salespeople, or let's just call them agents, or service folks are doing compared to each other. Like maybe who needs some assistance with some training, who's doing really well, and we could take that and use it as a great example for the rest of our employees. But not only that, but some of the things that they've been implementing now is you may have customer interactions that are coming in. And the reason why I say interactions and not calls, because this could happen over a chat bot, this could happen over SMS, right? And all of this goes in the same repository. And the AI is looking at it, scoring it. But they also detect some things maybe you didn't realize you were even having. So contact centers have historically had agents that when people call in, they call it dispositioning. So people call in, you give them 5 to 10 things and say, hey, this was a new sale on widgets. Okay. So we just disposition that. But what happens when somebody calls in and that's not exactly their issue? Or maybe they're just inquiring about widgets, but they don't actually buy them. Do we have a disposition code? Did the person that set this up foreknow the 8 things that our customers would be talking about? Probably not. Like there's
Right.
so many reasons why a customer might contact your business. Well, the AI is smart enough to realize, you know what, outside of the 8 that you predefined,
Yeah.
we have this one that's like really the third most reason why customers call in that you
Hmm.
didn't even, you didn't even think, you didn't even categorize. Would you like to create a category for that? And you can say
Yeah.
yes. And now I can start tracking that and say, you know what? We need to train some more folks on this. We need to get some more resources around this because really this is the third most reason why our customers are contacting us. So we need to do a better job in this area. So that's just, there's many other the one thing I will say about AI before I stop here, I could go on and on, is I feel like customers think that they have to do they're just going to implement AI and do everything.
Yeah.
Don't do that. That's the most likely way to fail with AI, right? Start with a single tool that takes care of the problem that you're having the most, right? The most pain point. Start with a single tool. Start with that. That will enhance that workflow so much. And then you'll have the ability to go on and say, okay, what's because when you take out the top problem, another problem is going to be the top problem. So now let's attack that one. So let's do one thing at a time with AI, and tackle those and take care of that. And then you're gonna, over time, not do it all at once. You're gonna over time see the efficiency come in and really get better tools and be able to serve your customers better.
Now, so sticking with workflow, but moving to something we've had for a very long time, like SMS. It does feel like over the last couple of years that businesses are using that in an effective way, so much more than they used to. And it's my feeling that some of these technologies we've had forever were jump started. The behavior was jump started in using them because of the pandemic. So I'd be
Mhm.
curious to get your take on that, and if you think that's the case. But I do feel like particularly a lot of these platforms that are able to set appointments or self-service. Like if I call in, I'd like to have the option of having the system text me and set my own appointment if I'm going to a doctor or a dentist or whatever. I don't remember doing that much before, but over the last year or so, it seems to be quite prevalent and really useful. Do you see that a lot in the different folks that you're talking to where they're wanting to implement that?
I do not as much as you would think because just like you said, I was kind of curious about you because I'm maybe like if you go out and you look at some of the reports and some of the statistics that people answer and stuff, I'm probably a little older than the demographic that says I am SMS first.
Right.
I might be
Yeah.
right on the edge of people that say they
Yeah.
call first. But much like you said, we're used to interacting on SMS with any number, our personal acquaintances, other businesses, and so that's starting to become more the norm. And what we've seen, trending is what starts as a personal way of communication ends up the next generation wants to use that for business, right? So will we, I don't know, in 5 years have TikTok support? You take, I don't know,
I mean,
kind of
but
being,
the channels are definitely there, right? I mean,
yeah.
just think about these different channels they have. It is SMS. I see WhatsApp, I see
Hmm.
Facebook, Twitter, and so in many of the platforms and many of the platforms that aren't on Gartner as well. But so for a workflow perspective, and you're implementing, how do folks go about choosing a good care, a good provider? Because again, if you're dealing with consultants, just taking you through the whole process is one thing, but what's the general approach to adding things that might work better? Because you're going from one platform to another. So even if you're going from a cloud platform, you've already moved to another cloud platform, and you have some things you'd like to implement, what's the best approach? Kind of a big bang, don't change much in the beginning and get your users really used to it first, or what's the general best practice there?
Yeah, I think knowing your end users is number one. For some, I would say the big bang is the way to go, right? Because you roll out this new platform and it only does half of it, and I got to do the other half manually. Some employees will be like, "Ah, I hate this new platform," and then it's hard to get the ball rolling. It's hard to say, "Yeah, but in 2 months we're gonna integrate it with our CRM, and it's gonna put those notes in automatically." So for some, big bang is the right way. For others, you're right. Taking those baby steps, depending on where they're coming from, is maybe this platform, even though we haven't fully integrated it yet, is so much better than where we came from. Let's not try to eat the well in one bite. Let's give our employees the ability to SMS, and then as a next step tell them, you know what, next month when you SMS, as we're doing this, it's actually going to write that in the CRM for you, and you're not even going to have to go and create notes on this. So kind of understanding your employees and where they're coming from, and that's again something that we can help do, right?
Yeah.
Help find that approach and say, okay, do we need to do this kind of all at once and get them excited and get them going? Or how can we lay this out where we're doing a phased approach for it?
And I feel like a good approach as well, to your point, could be where, some or most departments remain similar to what's been there, and then augment or even change significantly another department who's willing to be part of a pilot. And then from there, it's the rollout is much smoother.
Yeah,
Um,
and have those pilot employees, really kind of be the champions within the organization and say, you know what, this is fantastic. It's saved me, 10% of my time a day by not having to do this step that I had to do before.
Absolutely. I'm curious as far as how many folks you're seeing, in the medium-sized business or small business moving from on-premise, compared to moving from other cloud contact centers. And for the ones that are moving from the cloud contact centers, like what are they? Why are they looking at changing? But first, maybe the on-premise. Are you seeing much movement there, or is you're not seeing that much?
I am not seeing as much in the small segment just because I feel like they've, for the most part, already done it, right? A
And
lot of them.
particularly with the integration, and many of the small companies are using the same cloud
Mhm,
phone system, right,
mhm.
for contact center as well.
Yes. Yeah. And rightfully so for those organizations because that just makes the communication internally as well as externally just seamless. The medium to large size business, especially if they're just trying to hold on to um, to maintain the expenditure that they had on a premise system, or if they have some sort of regulatory or something they have to abide by, they're maybe in certain cases hanging on to that premise platform. But I talk to people every day. They're increasingly finding it difficult to find those platforms are end of lifing the platform. They're going out of service, and then finding folks that will actually come and work. Have a managed service where they can have folks come and do work on those or create tickets. Or so it is getting increasingly more difficult for those on-premise platforms, and that's across the board, whether you're small, medium, or enterprise.
Yes, no, absolutely. And then as far as the folks who are on a cloud platform right now, and for contact center, it seems like people stay on these platforms for a very long time. But you had mentioned to me the other day that some folks are moving and maybe had moved to the cloud very quickly during COVID.
Mhm. Yes.
So what might they be finding that isn't working for them in certain platforms, or why are they looking to switch?
Yeah, so they even from their current provider, a lot of them are hearing, "Hey, you can integrate, you can bring in some of these other tools that we talked about, like SMS or social media channels. You can integrate with your CRM." But maybe the CRM that they initially, when they went out and they were looking for a cloud platform during COVID, or just because they thought they needed to make that jump, didn't have an integration with their current CRM, or it's going to be difficult because they have APIs. And maybe there's another one that has an out of the box integration with their current CRM, or has done work previously with that CRM and already has the APIs built, specifically for it. Those are some of the reasons. And I go back to that because a lot of times it starts there, right? They're so ingrained in that CRM. That's where, their source of truth, that's where their business is built around.
Yeah.
So a lot of times it is, okay, who can integrate with this CRM is kind of their topmost priority. And so that's a lot of times why I see folks moving from one provider to another, outside of, maybe they just jumped quickly because of COVID and made a decision, and now they just want to step back and take time and evaluate and see maybe who might be a better fit.
Okay. And as we wrap up, I am curious on this kind of merging between UCaaS, Unified Communication as a Service, which was what we all call Cloud PBX now, and contact center. And I mean, one notable example, and I'm curious if you can, you see this happening, across the industry, is Zoom. Obviously everybody knows Zoom from, well,
Mhm.
particularly from the pandemic, but Zoom Phone, and Zoom Workplace, right? And now Zoom Contact Center. And I feel
Mhm.
like they've put a lot of focus on that, over the last couple of years. Are you seeing that with many providers that have been cloud PBX players that are really wanting to expand out and be in customer experience?
Yes, almost all of them, right? I'm trying to think of one that isn't expanding into customer experience. And that is because if you go out, and I think they would all agree, 98% of them have all the same tools, right? They're going to have a video meeting so we can meet internally. They're going to have some sort of chat. Think of Microsoft Teams, right? They all have those components. Um, and so they're competing on price at that point, right? If they all have the same tools and they all provide, decent support, what are you going to look at? Price. So they've all kind of beaten each other up over price. Where they can actually stand to separate themselves, or is the tools that they build on top of that, right? The CX tools. And what I like about these companies doing both is that it used to be we had a UCAS, a Unified Communication seat, and then we had a CCAS seat, or that contact center, right? In this contact center seat, you go from, and I'm just throwing numbers out here, so don't quote me on these. You're going from a $20 seat here
Yeah.
to a $120 seat here, or more, right?
Yeah.
Depending on the tools that you add on. And so that's quite a gap. If this person over here, if Misha says, you know what, I have a unified communication seat, but what I'd really like to add on to it maybe is that voice component that we talked about, that analyzes and tells me how I'm doing in my conversation. Well, but that's the only tool I want, right? But I still have to go and spend an extra $100 to get
Yeah.
that. So what I like about these platforms having all of this is they're starting to understand that there are people that live in that gray area, right? Misha lives in sales. He's not a support agent, right? He wants this tool, So what they've done is they've taken these UCAS seats and they've stacked on top maybe like a sales stack on or a support stack on. So they've bundled some tools that work
Mm-hmm.
well for those
Mm-hmm.
specific functions.
Mm-hmm.
And they're just add-ons, right? They're not jumping seats or, going up a seat. They're just an add-on to your unified communication seats for a lot less expensive. And they give you really customized tools that you would need for your sales position or your support position, whatever it is. And that's the most exciting thing that I think I've seen. So you may get an organization, say there's 100 seats, and they do have a 20-person contact center. They do need all those tools, but
Mm-hmm.
then they also have a 5-person sales team, and they don't need this contact center. That's not their daily focus,
Yeah.
but they do need these additional tools, the voice analytics, so they can see what their customers are saying and what they're asking for and those type of things, or maybe even some self-service or things like that. But you can get those with those add-ons without having to go to a full contact center seat.
All
That's what
right.
I think is really exciting right now, what's happening.
Yeah. No, well, I really appreciate your time today. And I think one of the things that I've taken out of this more than anything else is the customer experience piece. As far as workflow and really talking to folks about their particular business. I mean, like you said, 98% of this stuff is the same, but it's not always implemented the same way. And the integrations aren't all the same. And there are some folks that are better in one industry or another, particularly with integrations, whether it's healthcare or banking, manufacturing. But I think they're interesting times to be in communications. I got into communications basically 25 years ago because I knew it was going to change a lot, and it continues to change a lot, and some things stay the same. So that's
Yeah.
interesting too.
Yeah, and
But
there's value in that experience, right? Because you not only, know where we are, but you know where we came from and why we changed, and that's important, is knowing the why. So,
absolutely. Well, again, thank you very much, Michael, and I hope you have a very nice afternoon.
yeah, thanks, Misha. Appreciate it.